share or a couple more? Yeah. Well, one more. Should we speak to? Should we want to see too?
today is National Children's Mental Health Day. And I thought that was very fitting because we had mental health in our LCAT and almost all of our schools have a school culture day. So, National Mental Health Day. Would you please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The report from closed session is on item 3.1, there is nothing to report. On item 3.2, the board voted to reject claim 569645 at this time. And so there are two other items under closed session that we didn't get to in that 15 minutes that we had. So we're going to reconvene after the meeting for the rest of the closed session. Next, we have board agenda approval.
I can move to approve the agenda.
I do have one.
Frank has one. Yeah.
So we need to pull item 9.9, approval of purchase for playgrounds for Doodle and Montclair. And we will tell you during agenda setting what we need to do, because in order for us to be done on time, we're going to have to do a special meeting that we can find at least 3 of you to do. But the way things are posted isn't going to work, and so we're going to have to do something. But we'll talk about that in agenda setting.
Okay, so then we need a motion to approve the agenda omitting 9.9.
So I will move to approve the agenda of May 9th, 2019, omitting 9.9.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the District May 2019 Employee of the Month, Cheryl Hassett, the Staff Secretary in Fiscal Services and IT. Could we get Cheryl to come forward? You need at the podium, please.
I was trying not to do that.
Congratulations. This is quite an honor and quite a nice night to have this happen. So I don't have any words to embarrass you with. I'm really sorry, but I'm sure somebody does.
I'm sure
So
we do.
who would like to speak?
We would.
Okay.
I'll speak first because she was with us first. We had her first. I want you all to know that. We just want to recognize you for all the hard work you did when you were at Cupertino Middle School. And as hard as you worked while you were at Cupertino Middle School, when you stepped over the district office, you came back and worked almost twice as hard to help us with the transition while you were not there. And I know that the staff appreciated all the work you did to make sure their supplies were in house before school started, and a lot of the supplies related to our intervention came on time because of the work you did with Ms. Trice and other teachers. So we all wanted to appreciate you. Thank you, Janine.
Hello, I'm Teresa Kwan. I work in the Business Service Department. And I was saying that Cheryl is this ray of sunshine. She's just so wonderful to work with. I first met her when she was started as secretary at Cupertino, where getting to that position, working the school site, is really difficult. She is really well organized, she can understand, and she's just a little joy to work with. And she carries that same mentality working here in business services too. She can be fun, and she's just, everybody loves her. So that's why I'm so glad she got this award. She's so well deserving. Thank you.
All right, good evening. My name is Mahmoud Abed. I'm the IT director at CUSD. So when Cheryl found out that she's going to be standing in front of everyone here today, she asked me to keep it short, and of course she turns too red and faints. So with that said, we'll start from the beginning. Many years ago. So Cheryl is an amazing asset to the IT department, not just to me, but to the whole department. She really is a dedicated employee that really does care about the CUSD family. With the event, so the event over at CMS, when she started to transition over, she had to assist to start the year. And it was something that she was willing to do from the get-go, from right away. She was like, yes, I'll do it. Just let me know when you need me to go there. We worked with the school and had her come out. And that's something that kind of stands for her character. She's willing to do what she needs to do to make sure that the job gets taken care of. She does, so now I want to tell you guys a little story. So it's something about what, sometimes excites and how we knew that Cheryl was a good fit for both of our departments. So you can tell when someone's excited about something when their eyes light up. So when we talk about things like budget, E-rate, purchase orders, and electric staplers, you gotta ask her about her electric stapler. Don't forget to ask her about it. Yeah, so the one thing that I do regret not doing is I wish I recorded Cheryl's reaction to when we told her that she was going to be recognized as a classified employee of the month. I swear it's way more entertaining than anything, well maybe not entertaining more than I can do, but definitely more than... It was a great reaction that I regret not capturing for everyone here. So Cheryl, I'm grateful to have you as part of our IT team. I'm really happy to hear that you were recognized here today, and thank you for everything you do.
Good evening. He told me he will only say one sentence. Cheryl is part of business services department, and we love having her in our front office. So I have a few words that our staff wrote. This is the time to embarrass her. They said, Cheryl is an exceptional employee and she truly deserves, goes above and beyond her assignments. She is always helpful, cheerful, proactive, and she gets along with everyone. She is an excellent example when it comes to providing excellent customer service. Cheryl is very patient, she listens, and she really cares. When our parents come over to the business services, whether they're buying for bus or they're senior citizens applying for parcel tax, she's the first person that everybody sees, and she always has this smiling face and welcoming, warm welcoming. So when our visitors come in, they don't feel intimidated, because she's always there having a warm welcome to them. So we are very happy to have her in our department, and I'm really excited for her. Maybe I'm more excited than her that she won the Employee of the Month. So congratulations, Cheryl.
I do have a few embarrassing words for you, so just keep standing there and don't turn to red. So this was written by some of your colleagues. Cheryl moved from being budget secretary at CMS to fiscal services and IT over the summer. Although located at a different site, Cheryl still managed to help get CMS rolling last fall by helping with purchase orders and such until a replacement at CMS was hired. Cheryl is an incredible asset to fiscal services and information technology. She's a very efficient and effective employee who handles the daily running while going above and beyond expectations, never complains, staying focused and organized, and always keeps a smile. Cheryl always carries a positive attitude while stepping up to the plate in any situation to ensure both departments operate smoothly. She's quick to offer help and is very appreciative while displaying great customer services, whether it is to assist parents applying for a bus pass, directing our senior residents with parcel tax exemptions, or to anyone who walks into the department. This print is really small. When Cheryl transitioned from CMS to fiscal services and IT, she offered assistance to her replacement at CMS and assured her that she and the entire fiscal services team had helped her learn the budget position. Cheryl is an exceptional employee and truly deserves all the recognition for going above and beyond her duties.
It feels so good to be recognized, and my heart is like full of gratitude. And working under great managers, I have to say, does give you the get up and go, and especially when they acknowledge you. So thank you so much. But
you as well, and the great job you do. And we have some little prizes for you, but only royalty can see them. So someone will deliver them to your department.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. So surprises yet to come. Okay, we're at 6.4, the presentation, one of my favorite nights of the year. Whenever we recognize people, it's a favorite, but I love recognizing teachers because I've been there, and I know what you do every day. You touch the lives of our kids every day. And I can't say how much I appreciate what all of our teachers do, and all of you who are here tonight representing the teachers at your school who all do such a wonderful job. So with that, I want to introduce our two directors, Doug and Adolfo, who are going to be calling your names and bringing you up. And then let me kind of tell you how this is going to go. The board's going to stand there, you're going to run the gauntlet, you're going to shake everybody's hand, you're going to get a certificate, you're going to get a flower, and then you're going to go stand on the stage, and at the end, after everyone is introduced, we will take a picture. So, Doug and Adolfo, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Well, it's been an honor to serve on the CUSD Teacher of the Year Selection Committee and learning about the teachers' contributions not only to the site but to the community. It's quite a daunting task to actually select one teacher out of this August group. But with that, it's our pleasure to introduce our site Teachers of the Year. Representing Blue Hills, Karen Thompson. From Vargas, Shane Catlin. From Gilbert, Lauren Graham. From Eaton, Sherry Tanner Durston. From Eisenhower, Chella Slimak. So unable to attend tonight, but representing Korea, Katie Bartlett. From Garden Gate, Sharon Perry Barney. From Lincoln Elementary, Ann Green. From McAuliffe, Tammy Paul. Unable to attend tonight, but representing Meyerholtz, Connie Chan. From Montclair, Danielle Tucker. From John Buer, Lisa Nyans. From our host site, Nimitz, Lori Nelson. From Regnart, we had a tie. Representing Regnart is Denise Menon. From Sedgwick, Kathy Ho. From Stevens Creek, Pam Stephenson Corges. Unable to attend tonight, but representing Stockmeyer, Cynthia Rowe. Valley, Alexandra Ali Bouchard. Over to our middle schools. From Cupertino Middle School, Susan Rickamura. Unable to attend tonight, but representing Hyde, Usha Kolachan. From Kennedy, Jessica Norris. From Lawson Middle School and recognized posthumously, Linda Phillips. Linda is being represented by her cousins, Colleen and Renee. And from Miller Middle School, Mako Sue.
Congratulations to all of our Teacher of the Year. We can have another round of applause. Announcing our CUSD Teacher of the Year out of these fine candidates, and that person will go on to represent CUSD in the County Teacher of the Year selection. So it is my honor, my pleasure, and my joy to announce Danielle Tucker.
Wrote on my report card that Danielle Tucker is Danielle Thompson is very social. We all know, I think, what that means, so I try to keep this short. 20 years ago, life handed me a lot of lemons, and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and had to start giving myself multiple injections a day. And all of this in a time in my life where I just wanted to be a normal kid. And it wasn't until many years later when I finally realized that who I was mattered and not what other people judged me to be. And as I started my academic and then professional career working with children, it became quite clear that I wasn't the only one who felt this way at an early age. And I have a sign in my classroom that reads, "Fair isn't everyone getting the same thing. Fair is everybody getting what they need to be successful." And I believe that as teachers, we are faced with this impossible and enormous job of meeting all of the needs of our wonderful students, many of which of mine are. Despite those days, sometimes those weeks, and even sometimes those years, we all continue to do our best and show up for them. And our rewards don't come in the form of a paycheck. They come in the form of smiles, hugs, homemade cards, those aha moments, and sometimes that joy you feel when that one student finally writes his name on the paper for the first time in June. A little over 6 years ago, I got a phone call from Doug asking or inviting me to interview for a teacher position with CUSD. And at that time, I was in Hawaii, and we agreed to do a Skype interview. Well, for all of those who don't know, Skype only captures here to here. So Doug, Brandy, when you hired me, I was wearing a bathing suit. Since then, I've had the incredible opportunity to work with so many wonderful people here at CUSD. Mike, you won't take any of the credit, but you've been a guiding light and mentor, and I appreciate that, so thank you. Brandy, Paco, and Allison Lavara, you have been amazing support systems and helping me be a wonderful teacher, but not understanding that not only am I a teacher, but I'm a mom first, and I appreciate that, so thank you. My dream team, Kelly and Son, and every other teacher I've had the incredible pleasure to work with at Montclair and Garden Gate, you continue to inspire me and make coming to work feel not like a job. In fact, even though neither of us likes to brag about it, well, maybe just a little, I do have the incredible honor of working with Shelley Tui, my kindergarten teacher at Regnart, and I don't think she minds that I'm still very social. I grew up in the Cupertino district, and I always really felt a sense of community. I have very fond memories of choir practice with Miss O'Flynn at Regnart, pretending to understand what the word poignant meant when Mr. Grayson would use it at Kennedy in my middle school literature class. And I'll never forget the day I walked into Mr. Dawes' Monte Vista algebra class and he found out that I was part of the Constant family. He still remembered my dad and his brothers who went to all Cupertino schools as well. And my point is, Cupertino teachers, the teachers are what make Cupertino extremely unique. And I'm so honored to just have joined the ranks of the educators who serve this community. Again, not for the money, but because of the wonderful children and families who are part of this community. My parents, Dave and Tina, I'm eternally grateful to both of you for being models of how hard work and perseverance are so important in life. And my mom especially, who volunteers so much of her time to take care of my beautiful children for me, and I thank you for that. And last but certainly not least, my husband, thank you for saying yes to moving our young family back to my hometown so I could pursue this dream. Being the spouse of a teacher is not easy, but you have mastered the art perfectly. I'm extremely humbled to be standing among this group of very talented teachers and in a room with educators and staff who are all here for the kids. And certainly we are all deserving of this honorable award, so I share this with you. Thank you.
One more important person to hear from, and that's Kai. Where is Kai? Kai, right on.
Hi, my name is Kai Brown. I'm president of the Cupertino Education Association. I'm the union president for the teachers, basically. And tonight we come together to celebrate our Site Teachers of the Year. Teaching really is such a crazy job. I know because I did it for 23 years, and I loved every minute of it. What we do is so much more important than just impart knowledge. We wear so many hats. We're police officers keeping the peace. We're travel agents organizing field trips. We're confidants consoling those who are sad and feel left out. We're judges and lawyers resolving disputes. We're decorators creating beautiful, creative places to learn. We're comedians cracking corny jokes. I noticed that was one of the things all my students said I did best. We're doctors detecting when a child feels sick. And we are coaches challenging children to be resilient. We are these and so much more. As Sidney Hook once said, everyone who remembers their education remembers their teachers, not the methods nor the techniques. For it is the teachers who are the heart of the education system. I want to thank all our teachers for their hard work and commitment, and congratulate all our teachers of the year, and thank you for the incredible difference you make in our students' lives.
Just kiss right in front of your camera. Sorry.
Sheila Ruth, are you speaking under employee?
I think some students are going outside.
I've already spoken.
Okay, Sheila, I will take one seat.
We do too sometimes.
Yes.
Anyway, we have successfully, after 8 months, actually longer than 8 months, successfully come to an agreement to sign an MOU on health and welfare. And I wanted to point out how well we all work together on this. It took a lot of research, a lot of study. We all worked very hard on it. And then I'd also like to, and we've also come to an agreement on the collective bargaining agreement. We'll move into the ratification stage. But I also wanted to address a problem that we've had with the layoffs. As I went around with the doctor for the notifications for the layoffs and things, and we got talking. I learned more about the survey that was done that helped them determine that they were going to lay off 12 FTEs of the IA specialized. I have no idea when this survey was done, but I assume it was probably done at the end of last year, maybe January. And yet in all this time, principals have been allowed, knowing these reductions were coming, allowed to hire 16 people. 2 of the layoff notices that people just started, one hadn't started yet at a window. Okay, she was scheduled to start the next week. These same people were at an orientation meeting that is held for brand new employees last Wednesday. And at the end of the new employee orientation, they were asked to stay for a few minutes, and they were given their layoff notices. Tell me you don't have a problem with that. I couldn't, when we first learned that that might be the process, we suggested that they not be at the orientation. I know one of our union reps left when he found out what was going to happen. He was so disturbed by it, he couldn't stay for the meeting. I wanted to point this out to you because this is poor business. This is not how things are done. I've been in this district a long time. You guys, or management, I don't know if it's lack of communication between the departments, where it is, but there was a misstep here. And I'd like to think that you would do everything to prevent it from happening again. Those IA specialized applied for those positions, expected to have their jobs, and some of them hadn't even reported for work. Some had 70 hours on the job, 40 hours on the job. I think there was only one that had managed to have 200 hours on the job. She started in January. Okay? And I think that was my buzzer. The only other thing I'd like to do is the librarians have asked me to give you a breakdown of what is expected of them and get some input on how they're supposed to do their job at those 2 sites for 2 hours. I've run out of time, and that was my buzzer, right?
Yes, it was.
So I'll try to see you again next time and finish this.
Okay, thank you, Sheila.
I think it's very important that you all realize what happened to those specialized. I mean, that just should never have happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment? No public comment, so we're moving on to the consent items. And I think we need to consider 9.1 separately, so can we have a motion for 9.1?
I move to approve item 9.1.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, 9.1, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one person recusing. I always want to say abstaining, that's right, recusing. Okay, now we need a motion for 9.2 to 9.10, omitting 9.9.
Move to approve items 9.2 through 9.8 plus item 9.10.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Sylvia. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, information, budget assumptions. That must be Jeff.
Good evening.
Jeff, while you say that, maybe I can just say a quick word. I'm excited to have an information item on here so we get to practice clarifying questions as we discussed the other day. And I did just want to point out that we're putting together a series of things here so that we can pass the budget on June 13. Wanted to just start with a conversation around the budget assumptions, not getting into the budget multi-year or anything like that just yet. We will be bringing that next time. But this is really so that you understand what is behind the decisions that you will soon see in terms of the budget assumptions that we use in order to build that the budget.
Thank you. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say now for my intro because that was my intro. So thank you, Dr. Davis, for that. I just want to draw us back to the priority that we had this year was really to ensure our fiscal solvency, really take a deeper look at our practices, both internal and externally. And what I mean by that is what we do within the business services department, between the district office departments that we have, and obviously what that impact is on our school sites. And so I do believe we are making progress to where we want to get to, which is that solvency, and then being able to align ourselves back to that strategic plan that Allison and Leslie have brought to you, that you guys had the opportunity as a board to discuss at the advance. And so going into next year, as we're building our budget, this is the beginning for us. And so it really is important to know that with the series that Greg is referring to, we have transportation that we're going to talk about later on tonight. Next meeting, we're going to be able to talk about the governor's revision, which is actually impacting our assumptions. Even the assumptions that I'm going to talk about tonight have already changed up to about 2 hours ago. So please bear with us. It is like this at this time of the year. By the time we get to the June 13th board meeting, I will give you a new update on the assumptions that we're making at that point in time. And then when we come back as a team in August, I'll give you the final revisions at that point that we'll be assuming in the budget. But the big part is this is a three-part series. Our goal is always to get to that positive certification that we've talked about. And so when Dorothy hits on the budget assumptions, this is as of about a week ago when we posted it, but we did get some positive news today that the governor's budget will have additional dollars. I don't know necessarily what that dollar amount will look like for us. I do hope that after we go on May 20th to receive that update, we'll be able to have more firm numbers when we come back on May 23rd. And so with that, I'll turn this over to Dorothy, and then we'll come back and give you guys an opportunity to ask questions.
Hello again. So for our 1920 budget, our assumptions that we're using right now is we always include the static column for the salary of the personnel, and it will be also included in our multi-year projection when we present that to you for approval. The 3% board reserve and the 3% state reserve is our goal to make sure that we meet that. The COLA is slightly lower. There was an update that the COLA went down a little bit. I think it's about 0.02%, so it's not like a significant change. So we're using that percentage to calculate our COLA. STIRS is the same as second interim, but I think we've got an update, Jeff got an update today, regarding the governor's budget, so we will have more clarity when we go to the main revise. The PERS there's a slight increase, we don't want to see more increase, but this is not a bad increase, it's not affecting us significantly, but we still have to put it in our assumption. Our enrollment, we're using our demographer 16,879 for our assumption until we get the final number from student assignment. And finalizing the budget reduction, so I am currently working in making all the adjustments for the positions that we are reducing and have approved for the last couple of times that it was presented to you. So our goal is to hit that 2 million in personnel, so I cannot really tell you right now until I'm done with the adjustments in our budget model, but we will have it done when we bring it to you on the May 23rd. And the goal is we're still on target to have a balanced budget, and hopefully even better once we have the May revised information.
I should just speak a little bit more to the COLA before you go on. That's on there, just so we're on the same page. The assumption originally, we built into the budget about a 2.5 or so assumption since last year.
For 1920, it's 3.46.
Right, but we already projected in our multi-year, so the increase really is something like 0.8 or something like that of a percent. So it's less than a percent that is different from what we're already predicting. So do people understand that? I just want to make sure people understand. And it's not that we're reducing the COLA, it's that it's a little less than, we thought it was going to be about 1% over, but it's a little less than 1% over what we had already predicted. Okay.
So just to clarify on that, if I hear you, what you're saying, right, you were already conservative in the 5-year multi-year, and so now...
Yeah, well, we were basing it on information we had about what it would likely be, and I think, essentially, right? So that's how we budgeted it, yeah, so we had already built the budget assuming that in the next year we would increase our COLA, or we would have a COLA of 2.46 or something. 3.3%. Yeah. Oh yeah, 3.6. Yeah.
It's 2.76. It's 2.76 this year for 18-19, and it's 3.46 for next year for 19-20. And we are actually using the COLA projection from the school services that they project for the next 5 years, and that's what we included in our multi-year projection.
I would add to the COLA conversation right now. The board asked us in December, what is the biggest area of the budget that can change? And I did speak to at that time that the COLA is the one area that if you look at the last 10 years, there's been so much movement in that. We kind of always assume there's going to be more movement beyond what we're already projecting. So even though the numbers may not reflect it, we always know that can go up and down. It's not unusual.
So Jeff, I have a question also about COLA.
Yes.
At what point in the calendar do we know what the COLA is going to be?
June officially, but I would say by the May revision, we should have a really good number.
Okay.
A really safe number to go with. What George is saying is in August, we'll actually have it in place, but we'll have a really good understanding at the May revision. There hasn't been that many changes in it. I mean, especially with the way the economy is looking right now, I wouldn't anticipate very much more than we get at the May revision. And the other piece I want to address is we have $2 million in personnel costs, and we did talk about with the board that we were looking at a need of $3 million. Based on when we went back and looked at all the dollars not encumbered right now, we do believe that the numbers we will be projecting, we will be okay at that $3 million mark. Based on, we always want to keep impact as far away from the classrooms as possible. We know there's an impact with any personnel costs or any personnel reductions, and it is lower than what we did bring to the board at second midterm.
Can I just clarify, sorry, is that okay to do that since we're here right now? So the June versus August, so LCAP adopted versus next August when we get what's the word I'm looking for? Adopted. When we have adopted budget in August, is that the point at which we know for sure that the COLA is sticking, or can we expect that the one we see in June with the LCAP budget to be predicting whether or not we're looking at still being on target for that balanced budget for 2021?
I wouldn't think that it would change very much from June. August is always a better. The one thing that's really tough with school budget is there is always a little bit of movement. There always can be mid-year adjustments, which we haven't seen for a while. But I would say really what we present to you in June is a really good marker of what we're going to see for the 1920 year, and that really shouldn't be impacting us too much.
Yeah, once you adopt the budget in June, it goes into play. We won't do adjustments until first interim, right? Or until we close the books, we'll update everything. We'll say here's where we are, and then you do the second interim. It'll be different again because that's the way it is. So right, that is the process. But we might have other information in August, but not likely. It'll be relatively the same as what we know, I think, and then we use the first interim to update you on the realities of the budget, both from the perspective of closing the books, but also any new information.
All right, I'll circle back. Thank you.
As part of the assumptions, this is the breakdown we've been sharing with the board where our breakdown looked like for 18-19. This is what we're currently projecting as a breakdown for 19-20. 1% drops down a little bit from the 1.65 that it represents this year to about 1.53 million. And then below that, you see our total full-time equivalent. That does not matter, the full-time equivalent is that number, but it does not mean we have more employees than that because we have part-time positions. So a 0.2 or 0.4 lead into that full-time position. I don't have the numbers for what the total number of employees it represents, but the total number of FTE that we are projecting for next year. Any questions on this one before I move to the last slide?
Sorry, Jeff, actually, sorry, can you go back? Is my understanding right, or what else besides health and welfare does that full-time equivalent number drive because that's true for everybody in that column, right?
That would include the salary and health and welfare.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe personnel would like it.
Okay. Thank you.
So our next steps, the big next step for us is obviously the governor's budget update. We need to take that governor's budget update and apply it to our 5-year projection, which we will bring back to the board. We're also keeping a very, very close eye on our ADA projections. Right now, we're using moderate numbers, and we're also we're taking a look at our demographer report numbers that we've had for years and comparing those two. And so there has been a fairly large difference over the years on what the projection is and what we actually see in our classrooms at the start of the next year. And so we are keeping a very close watch on that. We're going to be looking at the push-through numbers, and what that means are the students that we know are returning for next year. Stacy and her entire team has been looking at the staffing arrangements at all the schools for all the classes. And then the final, we will identify the key factors we should be aware of for the 19-20 year. And so with that, that's the end of our information tonight, and take any final questions the board may have.
Questions, Jerry?
Yes, hi, Jeff. I was wondering, what are the assumptions you're using for the contributions from Cooper Doodle and the CUSD 25C, I guess? If you comment on that, those two components.
So from CEEF right now, we're projecting $187,000 being included in the budget. For Cooper Doodle, we are not assuming anything. We do have a very strong belief that we're going to have a fairly significant increase in the rental or the leasing of our facilities. The board has been approving the last few board meetings new contracts and extending of contracts. We will be bringing more to you coming up here in June. So we do believe there'll be more revenue there. Every time we approve that contract, we are taking into account those dollars associated with it if it's a new contract. For Cooper Doodle, we are opening up a new preschool in Montclair, so most of our assumptions will come for the 2020-2021 school year. And so in being conservative right now, we do believe we're going to make at least $100,000 each of those programs beginning in 2021, but we are not building it into the budget at this time.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and just to tag on, we really think we need to get a couple of years of actual evidence of what dollars are coming in before we make predictive assumptions at this point. But I feel certain that we will be bringing in some more money, and I understand we're going to have a pretty robust increase just in summer programs alone because we've negotiated a lot of different programs and costs in the summer. So there will be increase in budget, but we're just not comfortable predicting at this point.
Can you remind me on those new contracts that are coming up? The prior board, I think, had a presentation on where we were at as far as coming to market rate on those. Are we most of those are? Do you want to speak to that at all?
Sure. I think right now with all of our contracts that we have, our lease agreements either expire this year or next June of 2020. So by the time the district gets to 2021, they will all reflect more current value rates. I do believe that we will be bringing to the board sometime early next year potential increases to what we're currently charging per square feet. I think we're probably due at that point to review that again, probably early in the fall.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Jeff. So these are discussion items, we can actually talk. And the first one is board bylaw terms of office, 9110. Leslie?
So we're going to sort of lump them all together with my introduction, and then we'll take them one by one. But we're presenting 4 board policies for first read and discussion tonight. And you're right, it's an opportunity for you to ask questions or have a dialogue amongst yourselves, or to get clarification on content from us. I'll briefly highlight each policy or the revisions, and then I do encourage you to have a conversation tonight so we know what to do in bringing it back to you. If you have little wordsmithing items, you can certainly send those to me offline if we don't want to spend the time tonight having that discussion. So the first one is board policy or board bylaw 9110, terms of office. And this one actually reflects a law. It's new to us. It reflects a law and education code. It's recommended but not required, but as we know, Ed code has to be followed. And it is recommended that we add this to our repertoire of board bylaws. So, any conversation? Yeah, I figured we'll take each of these one by one.
Anybody have questions or any questions or comments about that one? I do. Okay, I just have a question. A few years ago, we went from odd year elections to even year elections. And I noticed there are no dates reflected in this board policy. Is that common, or should we have dates in there, or should we say we do even years, or should we say we do presidential and gubernatorial? Or not. I don't know the answer to the question.
Right, and I'm not sure I know the answer to the one to it either. The reason why this came to us as a change is because they switched from first Friday in December to a second Friday in December, according to Ed Code. So I'm not sure, Craig, if you feel that specific dates or years are needed. Yeah. If that would be.
I guess now that we have them, we could say, 3 are determined on every 4 years commencing at a certain date, and the other 2, because we're on a 3-2.
Right.
But we could always put that in just so it's clear.
I think, I would like to do that. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but I think it's clearer if we specify.
So what you're proposing is that we add in that we do the 3 on the state primary year, or on the gubernatorial general year.
Right,
and
and
we do
2 in the
presidential primary.
Or just as Craig suggested, say we do 3 every 4 years commencing such and such a year, and 2 every 4 years commencing in.
I'm totally fine with that. I think it's more important that we emphasize that we do the general, not the primary, right? We don't do March, we do.
No, we do the general.
November, so I would
Okay, so in the general election in those years, maybe. Anybody else have a weigh in on that?
I think I'm fine with that, and I think your expression of tying it to a specific starting of the state's good, rather than dependent on presidential and gubernatorial. God knows what they will do in the future. So yeah, I like this idea.
Okay. All right.
I would say there's wording from the original order that said we had to do it a certain way that we could just use. It says, right, because commencing in 2022, I guess, or 20 or 22. Whatever it was that the law said that by then you have to apply to.
Yeah,
we can just pull that language and we'll put it in something.
Okay, great. So we'll bring it back that way.
Okay, let's go on.
So is this one we could bring back on consent?
If you were okay with it.
So I'll propose that we bring it back on consent if everybody's comfortable with that change. Unless you're going to bring us any additional changes, but otherwise I'd say consent, yeah?
Yeah, consent's
Everybody's
fine.
Okay, so what we'll do when I upload it, I'll upload one with the new language in red and then a clean copy, and we'll put it on consent. Okay.
Okay, then 1250, visitors and outsiders. Any comments about that or questions?
I have a couple of questions. So the addition that's been added in red, any person who is not a student or staff member. So I'm wondering what the definition of a staff, are we staff members? Is it anyone with a badge? So that's question one. And question two, I wanted to just kind of throw out there, is it staff members of the district or staff members of that school? I just want to have a discussion. Do we want to, I think the whole purpose of this is so that if there are folks that the staff there doesn't recognize, we have this mechanism that they need to register. But if you're from another school, but I don't know enough about a lot of that, what happens during the day, people come in and out, so I'm kind of open for discussion for that. But the first question is, are board members considered staff members under this definition? Is it anyone in the payroll system or with a badge, or how would you define that?
So my guess would be it would be a staff member that is not from that school. And I don't know if we would consider board members, but for example, our executive team, when we go onto a campus, including Craig, we go into the office and we acknowledge that we are there. And I think it's very seldom that we would go into a space on campus without. And I believe that would be the process that most of our schools would follow, or all of our schools would follow. Craig, in regards to whether or not board members or staff members.
And I'm not pushing for like the ability to go in without signing in. It's really about clarifying the language. So I'm not really pushing that.
But I think it would be taken care of if we just said any person who is not a student or staff member of a particular school site shall, because we all do it. I mean, that is the expectation of any EC member, myself. We check in board members, so that is any person.
What about your like, let's say, plumber and HVAC is on the site and they're going back and forth between the district office? We're not asking them to
Right, but
the warehouse. We're not asking them to
Yeah, I think that a little bit different with them, because in that moment, first of all, they're required to be identifiable as that.
And I think our staff knows them.
Yeah, and it is more that in a way they are staff of that site in the moment that they're working at that site. It's a little bit different from the rest.
Oh, okay, staff at the moment. I get it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and if we felt like we needed to, I mean, honestly, the policy covers the intent, right? And the intent is that if children or other staff could possibly not know who somebody is, then they are required to go. And so the policy is everybody just check in when you get there if you're not a staff member of that site.
Are we rewording that now? Are we going to reword that?
I would recommend that we just add after student staff member of any particular school site. So it's clear that it's about that site. It's not about whether you are or not a staff member, board member, etc. Because I think that's the intent.
I have a question. I don't know if it's totally connected to this, so stop me if it's not. But as I was thinking about this, what do we do with like children younger than kindergarten? So like sometimes moms come in to volunteer, or parents come in to volunteer, and then I know at least the schools that I'm familiar with, generally we say, if you don't bring your preschool child with you, so like even if you're like doing the blue folders or whatever, right? Like, but I don't know if that's like a site policy, or if that's this policy, or if this is a different policy, or...
That's a tough one. That's a good question, because we do have, and other circumstances in which people have their kids and have to, for some reason, so I don't know. Like, I don't know if this policy is going to address every single possible situation that could happen, but my hope is that it certainly addresses the ones in relation to we would be nervous about if we didn't make it clear that if you're just not a normal person to that school, you have to check in. And it's just powerful because it gives staff the ability to go up to that person and say, our policy says that you need to check in. Have you checked in? I don't see a visitor badge or something. That's what you want to do. And I don't know that the policy will take care of every circumstance. I won't be able to use their judgment. If someone's walking their 3-year-old or carrying a 3-year-old through to get to the preschool at a different hour, because these don't apply during drop-off and pickup, because at that time everybody, right, it's a scramble going on, and it really is those odd times. And I just people want them to use their judgment. And I think.
So, is there a policy for those young children? And I'm just thinking because there's been measles outbreaks and those kinds of things, but we don't know, like sometimes children aren't.
So you're really referring to a parent volunteer who comes into the school to do something, bringing a 3-year-old in tow.
Or like parent volunteer, or like tours. Like I know, like with the alternative schools doing the tours, sometimes there's prospective families coming in and they're taking their younger ones with them.
We do not have that in policy language. I believe the general practice across the district is that because they're not covered under our liability insurance, we do ask for parents to make alternative, alternative thing. And
that's what I'm used to.
Yes.
Is I usually tell them.
Yes.
But I just was wondering
And
if it was actually written somewhere.
No, it is not written in policy. We don't have a policy written with that.
Might be in various school handbooks or something.
It might be in handbooks, but I don't think we have a board policy or an admin regulation. I can
Why don't
look
we
at
let's look
research.
into that a little bit. Next time we bring this back, we'll have a little more thought about that.
So it sounds like this one needs to come back, not under consent. We need a little more discussion, a little more information on this one.
I think, too, as you're researching that, I think we've got some sites that offer older students to, maybe offer kind of childcare for parent meetings. So I guess if we're going to clarify one, we ought to look at, if you're going to look at school handbooks, maybe check that out too, just so that we know kind of consistency of practice.
Right, and
I don't want to open a can of worms.
Well, we can. First of all, I'm not sure that is, 100% square onto this purpose of this particular policy.
Okay,
and so that's why I want to look to see whether there aren't other places, and we certainly could find the right policy to make it clear that we want things like that addressed in each school's handbook. So we can speak to that. Maybe it's an AR, maybe it's not a policy. I think we need a little time to look at this one a little bit more.
Should we be saying about the school events like anyone can go, right? So should we be explicitly saying that open house and we are not, hundreds of parents would be there or, grandparents would be there. So that kind of little bit, anybody could be a stranger as well there, but
My sense of it is that this particular policy refers to school hours. So if there's a open house after school, or in the evening or after school, that, we wouldn't have signed in and all that, right?
we have schools which is having open house during the daytime.
We do. That's right.
Yeah, so we have open house during the school timing itself.
Right. So does this apply to that?
Yeah.
The parents come to open house.
I just back to Craig's point about maybe we just need an AR, and let's let you guys bring something back to us that addresses.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is, the more I'm thinking about this, my past district, the policy was way more thorough than this one. It did, and it had a different title, so I'm a little confused about why this at this time and why we wouldn't have had one, because this has been, it has been mandated to have things like this for a while, so I'm not sure if I'm not conflating a couple of policies and whether there's actually another one that is similar in some way. So I feel like I need to do a little bit more research and think about what are the areas that we like some of the caveats you're raising, and to be really clear about, are we talking about at any time of the school day, after school, before school, and more. So I just think we need to look a little bit more into it.
Okay, so this one's coming back. All right, so we're moving on to communication with the public, Board Policy 1100.
So this one is an optional policy. It's new to us. What it does is it clarifies the ways we can communicated, clarifies government code related to mass mailings. There was a question, and we reached out to our legal to say, what's your thinking on this policy? They feel that it's important because most of the violations that districts may have related to this results because they don't have a policy in place. So this serves just as a reminder to all of us about when we send out mass mailings. There was also a question about newsletters, it's a term that the lawyer said you can't, no matter what, this is a statute, so they took the language directly from a statute. And so when they were referring to newsletters back in 1974, it was really just regularly published agency newsletters. So it is a word that we may or may not choose to include when we're talking about mass mailings, because the newsletters we send are also mass mailings. So for you to discuss.
So I'll jump in on that one. What made me uncomfortable about the word newsletters in there is I think it's so broad in the context we use it now, and especially knowing what I learned during the election in terms of FTPC counts, electronic distributions. I mean, it's like, I just worry if I'm, at a school site and I'm photographed, at open house or something, and that gets published in their, Friday bulletin, and it happens to be within the period of time before an election. Like, I don't ever want to set us up for somebody saying, but it was in policy, so to speak. And so the newsletters is a tough one for me, just because it's so broad in the way that we use them now, as opposed to 1974, when it maybe just was literally a pamphlet that got mailed out to every household. So, I mean, I would be really comfortable with mass mailings regarding blah, 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 but newsletters was a stumbling block for me, but I don't know how many of you.
So you're looking to broaden the definition or narrow it? I'm trying to understand your sort of thought here. Because it seems like mass mailing would broaden the definition.
Sounds broader to me.
Broader? Is that
what you're intending?
Well, it's broader, but what I hear you saying is that broader or not, the term newsletter is very nebulous. And it begs the question, why are you singling out a newsletter as compared to any other kind of mass mailing? So is it less confusing to just go with the mass mailing? And so yeah, maybe it's not a matter of broad, I guess I'm saying.
I guess I wasn't super clear on, and Craig and I discussed this a lot, but the intent, I guess what helped me is, Leslie, is when you were talking about that they took this language from something that's already in statute. And I guess I would want to understand what the intent here is in what they are trying to limit, and I don't know that newsletters gets at the intent.
Right. Well, it certainly doesn't any better than mass mailing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I think it just confuses everyone because it does, as it did for you and others, other board members. It just raised the what's the difference and why is it there? Right. It begs the question. And I bet we could think of other kind of mass mailings that are newsletters that are not named. So why that one? What's the purpose? And I do think it goes back to 74 when it was almost synonymous with the notion of a mass mailing, right? That it was a form of that anybody did. It was just, but now it has a way different meaning.
Yeah.
It's the emphasis, though, because the heading is mass mailings at public expense. So like a e-newsletter that goes out, like the principals send out the monthly newsletter, that just goes out on the website.
Right, it's free.
That's free. So that would be
But you're using our resource.
Yeah.
It's not just
For a
whether
service
it's
that-
print or not, although in this case they are talking about doing mass mailings, right? But the intent is if you're using, in this case, if you're using any resource of the school or the public dollar, in order to, because if there are people or staff who are doing it, right, there's other resource that you're using, and if it's at a time when it can promote somebody politically or otherwise, that's inappropriate, we can't do it, that's the intent. And I actually think that the heading is wrong from my perspective. The notion of public expense should be a part of the paragraph, well, we should note that, but this is about appropriate use of mass mailing, and especially during a time of election and blah, blah, blah. That's really what it is here, but it's a little confusing because the rest of that isn't all about that public expense. That's not what it's talking about.
Well, and I think to the point, like in listening to Leslie's description of what the legal advice was in terms of that they feel it's important because they're asking us to all be mindful together. I think for us to be mindful together, then I need kind of some more specifics around what are we trying to be mindful of. Because right now this feels very, I don't know. Either I feel like we don't include newsletters at all, or we include newsletters in all the various forms and we're specific about it. But this feels very, you use the word nebulous, and I would agree with that. I don't know. I really stumbled with this one, but if I'm the only one.
But I guess what I would say is why not remove the word newsletter?
That would be my first choice.
I don't think it has anything, and so I don't think that that should be a stumbling block. We should just go with mass mailing. I still think there's some structural change to this paragraph to make it a little bit clearer. But for me, as you then go down, I think it's pretty clear about what they're saying they're getting you to avoid, which is don't use being a board member as a way of promoting that fact so that you can gain for it by it in some way, and don't use public dollar to make that happen.
So the way I'm parsing this, I'm looking at my question or comment trying to structure. So basically what we're saying is we list four criteria for mass mailings that are prohibited, period, except for, then we list 3 more criteria that are accepted, but then again, except if it's within 60 days, and then those 3 are then, there's a double negative, so they are then indeed prohibited. I just want to make sure this is the logic that the way I'm parsing the document. There are 4 criteria prohibited, period, except there are 3 more criteria, in which case it would be okay, except within 60 days, and those 3 are also still not okay. That's okay, that's the intent. All right.
So is it a mass mailing if it goes to a specific address, either email address or physical address? Or is it a mass mailing if we just put it out there on the website? Is that considered a mass mailing? Like, if you tweet out tonight's photo of all of us with the Teachers of the Year, is that considered a mass
which is delivered by any means to a recipient at their residence, place of employment, business, post office. So the way I read that to be, it doesn't matter how it's sent. I mean, when this was written, it was probably, the intent is a little bit different, but with times changing, it is any way it's sent.
But then if that's the case, if it's to an address of physical residence, then email doesn't count, in which case newsletters shouldn't count.
Well, they count to the intent. First of all, who's sending that thing out would be the question, right? If it is using public resource, in other words, that would be the district that's sending something out, and this is talking about during a time basically of an election and other areas. So that's correct. If we use the district Twitter account to send out a photo of one of you that we send out to everybody, especially during an election time, then that would not be appropriate to do, using our resources.
But if all of us are in the photo, then that's okay. It's just only if it's like singling out.
Not during an election time. But what I'm saying, I think you just have to keep, the intent here is that you're not taking advantage of public dollar to promote yourself, even though from your perspective, well, that's not what I was doing. It's just saying you have to be mindful of that. And during those times when you should not, you should say, no, I shouldn't be in a photo during that time. We as a staff should be saying, hey, we shouldn't put out this newsletter or this mass mailing or post on the website or anything, right? Because that's the intent of it.
I'm wondering about the 60 days. Why the 60 days? Because it seems like you actually know who the candidates are further back than that, right? You have an election in November, which means this goes back to September, but by late July, you already know who the candidates are. So,
Yeah, so that's a government code. I don't know the background on why
Okay,
that government
so
code was,
what-
it's, yeah, in law.
Okay.
So,
all right, wrote it into, okay. So we're just basically inheriting whatever the government code is for this particular instance. Okay, thank you.
So, to Sylvia's point, do we then need to think about things like the scroll that's on the homepage of our district's website in the 60 days before an election?
So, because that's not, at that point, they're going into archives to find that there will be archived things that's different from us actively putting out something new during that time.
Posting a new one.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to like obliterate y'all when it's election.
No, I'm thinking more like I'm thinking more the scroll, the rotating photos that are on the website, right? I know
I mean, we might play safe and do it. I bet that someone would say, "Oh, come on, that's."
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Right,
but
right.
I mean, like if
Yeah.
we're going to that level of specificity, it starts.
And again, I mean, policies in the end are not really about you have better follow something to the letter of the law. If we wanted to do something like that, we should have an AR that goes with this that says, by the way, we will do the following thing in practice, which is we will remove the scroll, we will do, but I don't think we need to do that.
Yeah.
There's an intent here. It's there to protect you and, right, and to follow the rules, which is you don't use your office as a way to gain, and you certainly don't use public expense in order to make that happen, right? That's the intent of it, and I don't think we have. Again, it's almost never that a policy is written in a way where it will cover every single possible thing you might do, but I think the intent's actually pretty clear from my perspective. And if it isn't, that's what I think we have to know. Like, what if the intent of it isn't clear? Might help us if there's something we should do differently.
Anything else? You're looking like you have a question, Sylvia.
Figuring out what my question is. Sorry. I mean, I agree with the intent, but it's in the how it gets played out where it's still confusing to me. So that's my comment.
So do we want to bring this back? Do you guys want to think about it for 2 weeks? What do you want to do?
So is it something, what I understood is like this was there and we are just bringing it again, that's it, right?
No,
Nothing changed.
This is so it's a new policy that states the government code.
It's new to us.
It's new to
there are
us.
other districts that have had this policy. We happen not to have it.
Okay.
When that came to our attention and CSBA sent information about it, we said, oh, well, maybe we should put this before you to get it out there because it's an important intent and we want you to be protected and know what the rules are.
But do we know that what need to be changed or we just discussed and I don't think we reached any conclusion, right? So,
And one of the things I can do is I can reach out to our legal either before or after to say, are there things that, get sort of an idea of the violations that could be frequent violations if you didn't know about it. So what are the things that we want to be aware of in regards to our website, in regards to some of the comments that you brought up, just for clarification. They did say when we talked to them about this that they just do believe it is a good practice to have it in, probably because there's conversation like what's happening tonight for clarification, so that we are all aware and then are able to act accordingly. So I can sort of see what are the typical missteps. I believe the typical missteps are truly flyers or mass mailers, where it is at the time of an election. I don't think, based on my conversation with DWK, it wasn't websites or school newsletters and pictures.
We had, in the last 4 years, I suppose, we've had 2 instances of this actually happening. One of them was a district newsletter that went out with a board member's picture in an election year.
No.
That one did not go to the FPPC.
Email or it went out?
Mail. Glossy mail. The other one was also a mailer, and it was a different board member
that was on a flyer that was not published by the district, but was perceived to be advocating a political issue, and that one did go to the FEBC. So I think we need some kind of policy, because we didn't have one at that time.
I think I'm getting stuck on the mass mailing, because I think if I'm looking at intent, then to me it makes sense that the district shouldn't be advocating for a board member during an election with directed mail, right? Whether that's a direct email or a direct physical mail. But if you're just, but a website, if we start to then say a website is also the same as a mass mailing, then it's a line in the sand that just is going to keep shifting.
And I don't believe that's the intent. I don't think the website is. I will certainly clarify.
So then I would say that I would want some language, because I don't want it to be interpreted like, oh, the scrolling on the photo, but a backslash needs to be different, right? Or that, you know, same thing with Twitter too. Twitter isn't to the whatever the number of the distribution list on our, you know, people in our district, right? It's just out there, and whoever happens to see it sees it, right? And it's not ever. So I don't know. I guess that's where I'm getting stuck with, like.
Okay.
But again, if you use the Twitter sphere with your own account, personally, etc., nobody can say or do anything during that time. The fact that there's this out there or something does not mean that given that your hope is that a lot of our parents are in fact connected in some way, right? You're hoping to reach people. There's a reason you're putting it there, and if you're doing that during an election time, so I just think I'm just putting a plea in to keep separating. It's not just using Twitter to put something out, right? We can do that. We can have your pictures. We can do, but we can't do that if it's connected to ours during an election time or during other legislative things going on. That would be a different thing. I feel like we can share what are the kinds of things with our legal that you're raising and trying to get more clarity about, well, why mass mailing, what do we mean? Can we, and I think we just give all these examples to them. They'll help us delineate or not. They might say, oh, that's right, you should name every single one of them, or we'll figure it out. We'll bring that back based on their counsel. And hopefully that will clarify it.
Just maybe a comment here. So my understanding is this is a clarification, not clarification, but the government code's always been there. And I'm reading it now, right, 89002. So what we're doing through this action is really reflecting in the board policy. So because we meet the board policy presumably more frequently than we do government code. So nothing in the world's really changed. It's just that we're bringing what we would have had to follow anyway in the board policy, so we see it. So from that standpoint, so I'm reading 8902 here, and it does talk about mass mailing, but it doesn't use the word newsletter. So that might be something we could consider just in terms of following the language. So, yeah.
If I can, there's the summary of the law. So mass mailing sent out at public expense. So the one thing that's different compared to some of the things that occurred previously in the district was like the parcel tax flyer, for example, came up as a potential conflict because there was money that went into that flyer. So the district used dollars that went towards that mass mailing that could have potentially benefited candidates. So that's part of the difference when you talk about social media. There's not a cost associated with social media. But when you're talking about a mass mailing and we're actually paying the cost for postage on behalf of the candidate, that actually changes it a little bit. A little deeper too. No mass mailing may be sent at public expense. Specifically, a mailing is prohibited if all the following criteria are met. And there was 4 areas of the criteria. I don't know if I want to read them all out right now. It goes on to multiple pages. So if there's something we want to return, but there's actually a criteria that is fully met of whether or not something is considered a mass mailing at the public expense. And I think that's the caveat that's different than maybe some of the direction this is going right now.
So are you saying that the at public expense does not include staff time, people working on it? Because usually it does, but maybe this is trying to remove that and only talk about the mail in all of its form going out. Is that what this is? Because from my perspective, if you're using our resources of any kind, which is our people or anything, to put out a message during an election time that could promote something, it seems to me that would not be appropriate.
We can see if the laws change. I know back in 2016, it was really about the physical mailing that came up, because just from the industry side, tech always falls pretty far behind in what legislative or what the current government code is. And so typically that becomes, I don't say, not the greater of the law, but it takes time for it to catch up. So mailing at that point in time was really considered the paper mailing that was sent out by a public entity.
But maybe that's why they have a newsletter, and they're already saying then that you could send a digital newsletter from the district office using our blast system. And that, because to me, that's the same thing. One year just...
It wasn't actually considered the same thing at the time, that the laws changed since then, but it was not considered at the time. But again, when it's at currently today, I can't speak to as much. I can just go back to what was there in 2016.
Because I would imagine, like, what you're referring to, then it could be like a budget line item that somebody would say, you spent this amount of money on this mailer, right? Like the cost of the printing and mailing versus a person's, like, if somebody from the district is spending 10 minutes every other day posting something, then it's hard to parse out the money.
This is why I do think we have to look at other versions of it, because I'm going to bet that a lawyer will tell us it is not appropriate during an election time for the district to send out a newsletter that would have your picture in it that gives a certain message. I'm pretty sure that's not going to be okay. Just because you didn't do it by snail mail doesn't forgive doing that. And so I just think we need to look at it and get more clarification to figure out the differences, because I get the difference between the Twitter sphere and using our email, etc. And that's why I'm trying to get at maybe the intent of this really is talking about a physical print mailer that we send out and using resources to make that happen as something separate from all the other things that you should not do when you're running again, etc. So I think we need to get more advice.
And I would jump on one more part I made with what Craig said is there's also one of the challenges that occurred before is there was a single board member that was called out in the mailing. So it wasn't as represented, but it was a person potentially campaigning by themselves in a mailer, which also changes the conditions on that too, just as a point of clarity.
Right. So are y'all comfortable if they come back to us next time with more information about this particular one? Okay, then we're going to move on.
Or whenever, it doesn't...
Whatever.
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
next year.
Yeah, I think we all are in agreement though, yes, that we want something to come back, right? Yes? Yes, okay, all right.
So now we're on 11.4, revisions to the bylaw for orientation. Any comments about that?
Yes. So, I absolutely believe that the California School Boards Association serves us well as school board members, and that there is definitely a place for it. I don't know if calling their specifically branded orientation out in our own board policy is necessarily appropriate. So there's a section in it's the second page from the bottom that's talking specifically about attending their particular orientation, and I just wanted to see how people would feel about maybe just talking about members are encouraged to attend orientation and professional development to enhance their skills and abilities as board members, ... but not maybe necessarily call out any specific vendor, including even our own association.
I hadn't caught that one, but I would agree with it. I would agree with what Lori's saying. And then I guess there's an institute for new and first-term board members. I guess that's a CSBA thing also? Okay. Yeah. So maybe more of a generic language, it sounds like, what Lori's suggesting.
Yeah, so we probably use to attend orientations, institutes, workshops, and conferences relevant to blah, blah, blah.
For new trustees.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, do we want this, do we want to see it again? Do we want them to fix it and bring it back under consent?
Yes, we make those changes on
And so just clarify, and I believe the way we do this then is, since you are basically saying you're good with everything else except for wanting that one rewording, the only red line we'll bring back is to that wording, and the rest of it will just accept the changes and then give you a little bit at the bottom where this one is of the new part.
Okay, so with regard to board policies, what I have is that we're putting 11.1 and 11.4 on consent, and we're bringing back 11.2 and 11.3. Is that everybody's understanding? Okay, good.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, then we're moving on to 11.5, the LCAP.
Takes a while to load.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you notice how it chugged along even trying to load? It's still loading.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a long one. So we're on our LCAP journey, and most recently we heard about our stakeholder input. And then at the last meeting for our board advance, we reviewed the draft set of actions, noting ones that carried over and then the new proposed actions. And at this meeting, we're bringing you a working draft. It's still rough, but we wanted to give you a chance to get a sense of how it was shaping up, so that when we come to the next meeting, which is our public hearing on May 23rd, we'll have our finalized draft, we'll have everything in place there, and then be on track for approval at the June meeting. So we have this opportunity and then one more at the public hearing before we're going for that final approval this year. So after the last conversation that you had with the board advance, we made some adjustments from that list of actions into the LCAP document based on your feedback. And those areas were focused in a lot on supporting staff, so particularly in the area of substitutes. So we put some proposed additions in there around increasing the daily substitute rate, improving our coordination across departments to ensure the most efficient use of resources on those days, challenging ourselves to come up with some new creative solution that might not be the traditional way of kind of a sub for every classroom, but we don't know what that will be yet, but making a commitment to try to think out of the box and come up with something that would benefit everybody. And having some additional days for our new teachers and then beefing up our metrics also has been part of the work. In this working draft, it truly is a working draft. There are lots of things that are still missing because we're making sure that we have the exact costs for each action and those final budget pieces come along in these final last steps. We have been checking in with our county team as well, and they've been giving feedback on our draft, and we've been making adjustments along the way. We have our next check-in with them on Monday. We recently had our joint meeting with our union colleagues to get some feedback from them. We have PAC and DLAT coming up next week as well, and then we'll be at the moment of public hearing on May 23rd. So today, I wanted to get some feedback from you, give you a chance to have a discussion about the things that you're seeing there, and see if you have any proposed questions or revisions or things that you'd like us to think about as we go into the final phase for this year.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Any other comments or questions from the board? I would just like to say thank you for exploring the whole substitute thing, because that's a big thing with me, so I appreciate that.
Can we go through page by page? I'm actually going to take a break while you do that.
I'm not hearing anything.
So as far as our curriculum pieces go that are individual curriculum, our reading, our writing, our math, like I feel pretty clear on everything that's in here and what we're doing to support those. But technology is one of our goals. Technology to support learning specifically is one of our goals that kind of captures a lot of those sometimes. And I know over the years I've heard feedback in PAC and in DLAC and also from sites around how differently sometimes instructional technology is being used. I think that's actually kind of a great thing that different sites have different ways that they're incorporating it in that works for them. And I'm wondering if the way that we're structuring our LCAP funding kind of allows for some of that, site-specific identification of needs.
Yeah, so a couple of things come up for me in hearing that question. One is that we are surveying the sites to plan for the next step. So we're trying to capture that. But I actually had a great conversation at one of the schools about this today, and I think it's an area of growth for us, is that some things we want to be common as part of the student experience, and then there's the piece of the need for flexibility for each site. So, I think that as we find our way with the strategic plan, that will be a new lens that we can apply to decisions around technology too, around how does it help us, consider things like student voice and choice. How does it help us with personalizing for students or helping them get their voice out there in the world in creative ways, those kinds of things. And so I actually just talked to Amy about this today, and I think, it's kind of one of those horizon goals that isn't reflected in the LCAP, but as we line things up, once the strategic plan is in place, I think that's something that we can revisit is where are we showing those places of flexibility and where do we want to be aligned? And I think that will be part of our next steps for sure. And there's I know a lot of teachers who are doing really great things out there that want to be part of that conversation too.
Well, and I think your comment about strategic planning makes me think too around so much of the work we're doing right now around supporting the SEL piece and creating funds both here and in other places as a general fund for our sites to, everybody needs to have a SEL plan in place, and we're all working on climate at all of our sites, and I think so many of us have heard, climate goals are built into our SIPs, as Phil has commented on that today. So the same way that we're identifying that that's a priority, but also giving them flexibility for that, or like in the conversations around the PD, we're identifying PD as important for all of our staff, but we're allowing some choice and some voice amongst them for that. I think that's maybe another area where I think it would be great to see us. I like your idea of stretch goal for that. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else?
So I want to echo what Phyllis said about the substitute teachers. I'm really glad that we're doing something to help make that better, because I've just seen that that's an issue, right? So I'm so glad that that's specifically put in the LCAP. And with the coordination of the training and the sites and having more coordination at the district level. So I'm really glad about that. The other thing I did want to point out that I was really happy about was the SES disadvantaged students and how there's an emphasis on helping increasing by 24 points, I think. I had it in my notes, but basically that area is growing and improving, so that's great, because I think, especially in our district, we don't want to have any student fall behind or fall between the cracks. So I was really happy to see that. And then similar to the SEL stuff that Lori was talking about, I think what I would like to see a little bit more of, because I know you and I had emailed already a little bit about this with the MTSS and the direct correlation to SEL. It'd be nice to kind of get a better picture of logistically how that's going to work with the intervention specialists, with the MTSS team at the district coming in to support the on-site, what's happening on-site, because I think there's still a little bit of a disconnect there, like with how these decisions happening at the district level are actually being implemented at the state level. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think you're speaking to the action that says develop a district intervention team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so that's a new action for this year, and we have our meeting coming up for that next week, so we don't yet know what the plan will be because we want to be able to meet with the team to review the data and find out what are they already doing, what are their hopes for the way that we will work together as a district team at a set of school sites. So it might be something that we could better update you on outside of the LCAP process, if that would be okay, because it's evolving since it's a goal for next year that we're trying to get a jump start on this year and planning starting next week. So we're going to try to think about, instead of thinking about the students at their school sites, try to think collectively about within that set of schools, if we thought about all of these kids, kind of put our arms around them together, what would our system be? How would we know, how will we measure how it's working? What have we learned? Let's share that, develop our plan going into next year. I'm excited about this action, and I'd be happy to update you anytime you'd like to have an update, once we get it going, once we know the plan.
Yeah, I echo, it's part discussion, right? Yeah. So I'm totally with you on that. I think out of everything we're doing right now, it might be the single thing I'm the most excited about. So I would love to be a part of that journey and feeling updated on that. So anytime you guys want to bring us a before, middle, after kind of pieces of that journey, I think I would be excited to hear about that.
Okay, anything else?
I'll just add that I'm very happy with the way this is coming together. I particularly like the narrative. I think having read other LCAPs previous years, this is my favorite one. I think we talked about the portrait. There's an aspirational element in here that maybe I didn't pick up as much on the previous one. So structurally I like it. I thank you for, I can't imagine what your brain must be filled with thousands of details. It's like watching a house or like a skyscraper getting built. So so thank you. But really love the narrative here.
Thank you. It's really a team effort. I have many people helping me, including everybody over here, and of course Dr. Baker in the business office, and really that statement at the beginning is our collective work in strategic planning this year. So,
and I would like to say that I appreciate the fact that we've revisited it several times. When you only see it once, it feels so overwhelming, but it feels less so when you see it several times. So thank you for keeping us up to date and reading back. Anything else? Okay, moving along. Thank you, Allison. Regular education transportation update.
Well, I'm sure not going to steal your thunder this time.
I didn't even prepare an intro this time.
Oh, I was going to say a few things. No.
All right, Greg.
To begin tonight, we want to recognize two of our really important people in transportation. We have Sherry Christian here and Brunel Feedback here as well, so if there's any clarifying questions for them, they're the best ones to answer. Then Dorothy's here to help us on any of the budget questions that may come up as well. We have not brought a regular education transportation update to the board in a little bit of time, so we really tried to focus on three big areas of it. The first one is whether there's our current ridership, our current rates and potential future rates, and then the update on the total budget impact of our regular education transportation program. And so I won't read through it all, but what I can say big picture-wise, we are currently taking a look at all the routes that we offer district-wide to make sure they're the right routes for us. Some of these routes have been around for a long time, some are newer routes. Most of them are based on what is the potential ridership, what is the biggest need. And when I say that, I also think it's important for the board to recognize we have other needs in the district for regular education bus routes that we don't have right now. So this isn't all-inclusive, these are the only ones. These are just the ones we're currently running in the district. And so I can tell you some of them are based on expressways, the distance, the number of students moving from one area of the district to the other area of the district, for example, Stockmeyer to Cupertino Middle School would be an example of that. Again, when we we talk about ridership, I'm talking about our AM routes and our PM routes as a combination of the two. It could represent up to 3 buses, am I saying that right, for some of those routes. But more times than not, for some of the smaller ones, you are talking about one route in the morning and a route in the PM as well. The board, a couple of years ago, approved an increase in our fees for transportation. I do believe at the time, the board and the district at the time hoped that would cover the full cost of running our regular education routes. It does not cover it at this time. But for next year, there is a slight increase for our families. The 1920 rates are identified on the bottom. One of the things that I think when we were looking at the process, and I do thank Dorothy too for this, is to take a look at how do we get families into the lottery. And so we're actually moving to an online system for that this year. They've had to turn in. We've run a paper lottery for a long time. Leslie's been helping us send messages out to our family. We have our next message coming out tomorrow for our families for them to sign up for the routes. For our current routes that we're continuing for the 1920 school year. Jumping into the fiscal impact of it, the numbers are hard when we look at some areas, and then some of them are very clean and easy to talk about. So I'll talk about those first. The $695,000 does represent the total personnel costs associated with the program. It covers a percentage of management, but more of that is really our bus drivers and the buses associated with it. As is true for the $72,000 for supplies and materials, and then the $50,000 for services and contracts. That includes within these our cost of gasoline or diesel. And that brings it up to $817,000. What is not included is the cost for garage vehicle maintenance. When we look at our fleets, we have really 2 fleets. We have our white fleet, which is our maintenance vehicles, and then we have our yellow fleet, which is our buses. Within our bus side of it, we have special education transportation, and then we have our regular education transportation. Right now, the cost to running the garage and vehicle is only about 25% of it goes to our white fleet, and really there's 2 reasons for it. One, the wear and tear is slightly different, and the second reason is the board last year approved the lease of new vehicles. Newer vehicles requires less cost. Of the 75%, that is currently going towards the yellow fleet, it's really hard for us to get to a definitive number, but it can range from anywhere from 50-50 between the general and regular ed all the way up to 75%, depending on when we're going back through. One of our goals next year is to get to a very clean number of what that percentage is. But just so you know, yellow fleet about 75% of the cost, white fleet 25% of the cost. Total fees received. So right now, based on the fees that families are paying, it brings in about $251,000. We use an additional $532,000 based on the LCFF calculation. That $532,000 does not have to go to regular transportation. It is a number that through the calculation we can apply to any transportation as a whole. The one thing that is important, there's a maintenance of effort we're required to maintain. For a total of $783,600. So right now, without including the cost of running the garage, is about a $33,000 encroachment on our general fund hit right now. So the future discussion that I hope we can have as a board too going into next year is take a look at what the rates should be for the 2021 year. Take a look at maximizing the efficiencies of all the routes that we have district-wide, which is really an ongoing thing that I know Sherry and Renell do, and then continue to look at future grant opportunities. We did that this year. We will continue to apply for grants. We know getting new buses would be a huge deal for us as a district. It would lower our total cost if we're able to get that. Unfortunately, we applied for a grant for 10 buses, and we didn't qualify based on looking at our student population. We didn't qualify for it. And then hopefully in the fall, again, coming back to the board to discuss what future rates could be to offset some of the total costs that we have right now as a district to run our regular education program. So with that, I would open up to any questions. This is a discussion item tonight.
Jerry and Satish?
Okay. I actually have a number of basic questions. So thanks for bringing this in front of the board. It's something I wondered about. So I guess first, some basic questions. Do we own or do we lease our yellow fleet right now? Or is it a mixture? Did you comment on? We own it, okay. And then so the operating costs, and does that include depreciation? And is that in there somewhere, or where's the depreciation account? Is it somewhere else in the budget?
We do not have that in this account.
That's not here, okay. And then the mention of the lottery, then I guess that then one would logically, so the demand for bus service is larger than the supply that we have. Is that the case, or not necessarily the case? The fact you mentioned a lottery, that makes it sound like there are more people who want it than there are available. Could you again comment on the supply-demand situation?
In
right
some
now?
schools, there's more demand than we have buses to handle. And then in other schools that we offer transportation to, we don't bus enough children to even make that worthwhile.
Okay, so
Like for instance, we go to Montclair. We do 10 children in the morning and 10 children in the afternoon on a big bus. Now, originally there was more, but it's declined.
Okay.
Cupertino Middle, we have a lottery because there are a lot of students in the Stockholm area in Centerville. And I just had a request from a Montclair parent whose child is going to go there. We want busing too. We don't have a bus assigned. We don't have a bus route in that area. It wouldn't be feasible to even make one unless we had a bigger demand. To go there for 1 or 2 children is not cost effective. So some of our schools have very little amount of children, some big. DeBargus used to have a huge need. That's dropped off as well. So when we look at how many students we actually transport and the money that's coming in from the bus passes, we're doing this for free. Because of the gas and the repairs, big buses. Well, all of our buses are an aging fleet. And with that age comes a lot of repair.
Sure, okay. And just one more question. In terms of, I suppose we have a big parking lot somewhere where these buses are, and so I guess from a infrastructure standpoint, there must be so many buses we can support. Are we anywhere near at that limit? Like if there were demand and if there were, let's say, enough students at a school and somehow magically we got a grant to buy a bus, I guess what's keeping us from adding more buses? Is it funding? Is it just not having enough space infrastructure-wise? Where's the critical the bottleneck here, I guess? Sorry, that wasn't a clear, well-elucidated question, but it looked like you understand what I was asking.
So I would say we have the facility to add buses. What we don't have is, we actually have, what's our oldest bus right now? 1990? So our oldest bus is from 1990, so it's a financial reason, because we actually have a large number of buses that we should be talking about replacing. And right now, we don't have the budget to do that.
Okay.
And so that applies, I would say that kicks onto the special education side of it too. We had 2 buses break down this week that's impacting our students trying to get to school. So it's less about the facility side right now. If we had the dollars to do that, we would find ways to increase the number of buses that we could have on our yard.
Okay, thank you.
Remember, we're mandated to do the special needs, but we're not mandated to do the regular ed, right?
So, I kind of want to set the bar for a second here in terms of the finance, because obviously that's a huge deal. It talks up there about $33,000 in encroachment, meaning using general ed dollars beyond what we're raising. But the reality is that that did not include $423,000 or so dollars for maintenance relative to that we would supposedly not have to do at all, which is an unaccounted for encroachment essentially at that time, and 532 in LCFF dollars that can go to other things for LCFF. So just to set the bar, that's nearly $1 million that we're actually spending that we either don't have to spend or could be spending in other ways within the district. In my book, that's all encroachment. So I just wanted to clarify that. So when we get to, well, how would we be able to afford it? So just with what we have right now, what would we have to charge our kids to pick up $1 million in encroachment?
It sounds like it's more than that. There's also depreciation for the buses that aren't in any of these numbers you're talking about.
Wouldn't they already be fully depreciated?
I don't know. How does this, oh, that's true.
Most of them would be. There would be some residual. There would be some residual value.
Right.
Some of the buses are sold. There certainly isn't very.
Well, I was just thinking sort of the replacement. I guess that you have to put aside some money for replacement. Depreciation is the wrong term because you're the right thing to should have been written off already. But I guess what I'm saying, I don't
We
know,
already have
Baker's
it.
is yeah, that isn't in the cost to run the garage and the vehicle maintenance, the cost to eventually need to replace the buses.
Right.
Okay.
Satish, your next.
I have a few questions. One is this numbers, right? Is it increasing, is it reducing, or do we have a certain number always to meet? The number of students, like, I know I heard that you're saying that some schools are reducing, but some schools are increasing. So every year do we do some, rerouting or some kind of shuffling around?
Yes, we do. And a lot of times we do that in the middle of the year because the numbers will be, a lot of people will apply for the lottery and some will even be on a waiting list, but then as the year goes over, the numbers start to decrease, so we call people on the waiting list to come. But generally, we've seen a decline in how many people actually take the homeschool bus. And we can actually put some of our schools on minis, the smaller buses, because of the attendance is so low. But without having a prerequisite of you either have this many seats that you can fill to qualify or not, it's not cost effective. We should have a limit. You have to be able to put 128 children on 2 buses. That's 60 riders per bus each way. And we don't have that. So we're busing just a few children at the expense of the whole bus. And we have bought buses over the years, but we bought used buses and they're old. And so to keep them running, that's very high maintenance because we're band-aiding them just to keep them on the road. And like Jeff said, this week we had 2 of our wheelchair buses are down. We don't have the spares to cover that. So we were combining routes to try to get all the children to school. And that's parents go insane with that because it runs the risk of their child being late or being out of order from what they're used to. And they're very set anyways, like how much children are, they're used to schedule. So we just don't have the buses to replace them when they go down like that.
So I think we said that 2 sets of people, right? So one is that really we have an obligation that we have to transport them. One is like parent paying, kind of, right? So is it necessary that we have to have this option for parents? Like, let's say tomorrow we are cutting one route. Is it acceptable or is it something like we have signed up and we have to have this?
So is it acceptable for us to cut regular route? Yes, we can cut it. Would there be an impact on our community? Absolutely, there'd be an impact on our families. So we do not have to run the regular routes, but certainly there's been a commitment for the remainder of this year to run these routes, and there's a commitment right now in place for next year to run those routes.
And also, to set the bar, we have parents in various areas around the district who are not provided the opportunity, and so the dollars we're spending is for a relatively small set of our community. So I just want to be clear that yes, it is optional, and we're using it for a particular set of people, not generally for everybody. And I do have to say one thing real quick, just because it's been eating at me that I'm really, really upset with myself for not catching this, but we don't refer to non-special education students as regular, and I'm really feeling uncomfortable. I missed it in the slides. We've been using it tonight. I just want to be careful. It's general education, and it's just a lifelong career thing that it bothers me when we use that term. So I just want to acknowledge it and make sure that we try to switch the vernacular. And that's on me. I should have caught that. I don't know how I didn't.
I hear the conversation of sustainability, and I think that's an important one for us to have. And I know you said, when you prefaced this by saying part of this, the reason we're having this conversation now is you intend to bring back another iteration, if you will, right? Iterate on this conversation further. But, feeling responsible. Like, I do feel responsible a little bit to give a little bit of background on a school that is, has low ridership and has been having decreasing ridership, and kind of my very anecdotal, fully admitting, very anecdotal perception of kind of how that's happened over time. When my son entered as a kindergartner and ridership was higher at Montclair, there were other mitigating factors that went along with that. Number one, the school that was on the other side of the expressway, and I know this is true for Eisenhower as well. At one point in our district history, we had a school that was in the neighborhood that is now being bused across the expressway, right? So the two with the lowest ridership, we have a situation where we're busing kids across an expressway where the speed limit is 55 miles an hour, or maybe I'm wrong, 50 miles an hour, and they're crossing 4 major lanes of traffic. We also have a situation there right now where the only way that those kids get across that expressway is with a parent-subsidized crossing guard. And so if we're talking about ridership decreasing, I think a big part of that is because there has been such an effort to increase the safety and to really advocate around the safe routes to school aspect, which has increased the walking and bicycling portion of those students, and that may, again, anecdotally play a factor in why ridership has gone down on those buses. And so I think it's a bigger conversation than just, I guess where I'm going with this is I think it's a bigger conversation than just the sustainability of the bus route itself and whether or not, I agree there's an equity piece that goes along with it that I think is important to talk about. I think there's, how the route itself plays into the conversation of busing. I think there's the encroachment issue and how it plays into, what we offer to all students in this district and concentrating what isn't insubstantial funds into, a bus program that may not be sustainable over time. So there's a lot of things that I think we need to iterate on, I guess is where I'm going with this and in a future conversation.
So, I think is it worth to take a survey of these real consumers, like in these specific schools, that is, do they really need it kind of, right? Because the percentage of students, like what if you take a Cupertino Middle, for example, it's like 1,500 students, let's say, it's 10% or so, roughly. So most of the places, if you take it, it's pretty low in terms of, so if just because we are giving this provision, they are using it, or would they would have opted, if it was not there, they would have been okay, kind of. Because such a relatively low ridership, we are spending a lot, kind of, return of.
I don't know if I can speak to necessarily if what they would do or how they would react, whether or not the program existed. I mean, it's something we can definitely survey out to our families to understand the impact, which there would need to be a lot of conversations with our families if we were to make any adjustments with our current routes. But I can't speak to that right now.
I have a question. Is it possible to purchase buses out of bond money? Is that a legitimate bond expense if you put it in the ballot language?
I think we always want to be careful with the bond is to make sure that whatever we're purchasing is going to have a lifespan that we would feel comfortable with. And we kind of arbitrarily picked a number of 10 years. We talk about that with devices too. With buses, I would have to do a little bit more work into that. It could be possible, but I even get uncomfortable with some of the technology purchases being in a bond where you're talking about, it's going to last 5 to 7 years and you have a bond for so many years that our community has generously passed for the district to say that we would spend on that. I'm not sure that's the best use of it, but it's something we can look at.
Any other questions? Celine?
Respond to what Lori said about, just so I understand, what you're saying is that this is decision to have those bus routes in those areas had to do with the kind of the safety of crossing over expressways.
So all I can tell you is kind of what was told to me as a new parent, and this has been told to me a couple times in my neighborhood, is that when they closed down the elementary school in my neighborhood, that those parents at the time were under the impression that there was a promise made to them that they would always be bused across the expressway. I think that's true of some of those neighborhoods over at Eisenhower. I think that may be true of some of those neighborhoods over at Stevens Creek, that they go across the expressway. Whether or not there is a story in those neighborhoods, I don't know, because those aren't my neighborhoods. But and I've talked a little bit with Dr. Baker about this in terms of, what was said. I don't even know. I'm trying to think. Grant was closed, right after. Probably like sometime in the early 80s. We're talking 35, 40 years ago when that school was closed. I don't think a promise that was made then, it's probably not in writing anywhere. I don't know that you've gotten a board at that time can hold a future board to, any of that. I know that that's a factor with some of those that cross expressways.
So just that you're realizing that the reason the ridership has gone down is because the safe routes has
Well,
gone
certainly there's huge decline in enrollment that's gone down too, at least in my school, that I'm sure.
Maybe cost, because we've been,
It could be.
it's some combination
Yeah.
of all that.
But I know that our safe routes to school advocacy and putting in now all the crossing guards we have in has certainly, parent subsidized crossing guards has certainly increased both our walkers and riders as well. So, but then we have a rainy winter, and I don't know if you guys see increased ridership at all during rainy winters, but.
Well, I was going to say that was before my time with COOP, so I don't know why those schools were chosen, but I always have questioned it because we have children going from across Stevens Creek above to go to Kennedy, which is a long way. We don't offer them busing. They go as far back as Man. I don't know if you know where that is, but way down Stevens Creek at Man and Orange. All in that area, and they've asked for busing, and they asked me, well, why is that? Why do the other students get it and we don't? And we just do not have the capability to do it all, and all of those children are doing the same thing. They're crossing major thoroughfares. And so we do rely heavily on the crossing guards and the lighting, so that they go by the light. But, it's a concern, and it really isn't fair because some of them get busing and some of them don't, but we just simply don't have the buses to accommodate everybody who has requested. And I know I brought in the repair of the 2 smaller buses, but this last month we had 3 big buses break down. Before that, we had 2 break down in the Santa Cruz Hills doing a science camp. Those had to be towed. Those are huge expenses because there is an aging fleet. And, but of course we want to offer those field trips to our schools because we want our children to have that experience. But that in itself, with the prices that we charge, we're doing those field trips for free because we are just so under budget. We have tons of schools out of the district want us to take their trips. Well, of course, we just can't get our prices anywhere else because we haven't had an increase in so long.
So can I clarify, in terms of the discussion we're having, are we talking about if everything stays status quo, how do we maintain that? Or are we heading toward the discussion of saying, should we cut some of these services? You know what I'm asking?
We're trying to present data and make it and kind of set the bar, right? So at a time when you're raising the dollar amounts by 220 or however much it is, I just need to point out at $1 million for fewer than 400 kids, some of whom are only riding a half day one way, it's $2,500 a child that we're spending. And we're cutting positions, right? And we're doing all sorts of things in this district. And I just want people to understand. And it's not equitable because we got a lot of kids who aren't getting it. So we're spending it only on a set of kids. We haven't even talked about, even though alternative school families choose those schools, but they're driving past all those thoroughfares. So it's not clear to me what the criteria are today, even though maybe at one point there was a obvious reason for it. But I'm not so sure that it's a fair one, and I just think it's important for the board to start the conversation and be thinking about, because we're not changing anything today, and we're committed to next year. That's not going away. But at some point, as we pour over the budget and we make tough decisions every day about people, about program. LCFF dollars, $500,000 a year that we're spending essentially to provide for a certain set of kids who are not certainly necessarily our unduplicated count kids, it calls into question, I just think, a lot for us. And we're not taking a stance right now. We're simply saying we want you. That's why I keep trying to set the bar with you, just so you're clear about it, so that when we have the conversation, there's no elephant in the room that people aren't being honest about and bringing out for a conversation. No decision needed. We want to bring this information because annually we do something around transportation, what's going on, what we do. We just wanted you to understand it.
But should we be really looking into now since it's been brought in, right? So definitely financial issues plus priority issues also. Like some places people are not getting it. There's a demand. Some places there's no demand, and so on. So is it worth looking into that at some point of time? Because rather than just having the status, so which direction we should be going, kind of, right? So either, as she said, like are we plan to cut it off or are we plan to expand also in the other way? Right, like whichever way it is, or maybe shifting it or shuffling it, whatever you call it. At some point, I think some direction we need to move on this mindset issue.
One of the things that I think happened way back in the day, when we were closing schools right and left, and we were 45 schools at one point, now we're 25. So as we closed schools and children began to have to cross these major streets, part of it, I think, was to make it a little more palatable to parents to be able to say, we'll provide transportation across. And at one point, I think it was 4 major streets that we were transporting across. But it wasn't necessarily done by any scientific way or any equitable way necessarily. It just kind of grew by topsy, and then things like Lori mentions, promises that were made 30 years ago were made, I'm sure, to a lot of different schools for a variety of reasons. And so now we're kind of stuck with a program that doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of cost, in terms of equity, in terms of which kids we're serving and which kids we're not serving. So I think we need to take a long look at the whole program. And as Craig says, we've got some time to do this. We're committed for the next 2 years, but I'd like to see us take a look at the whole program and see, do we need it, number one? If we do, where? And I think changes need to be made, and I think we need to increase our bus fleet if we're going to continue to do this. But now you're talking about big expenses again. But I do think it's a continuing conversation we need to have.
I'd like to just maybe pick up on what Lori said, and I think what we've been talking about. If you could go to the last slide, Jeff, right, in your future discussions. And the item there about reviewing routes for maximizing efficiency. And I understand that from a financial standpoint, but this reminds me of a lot of the discussions that's happening in the city council chambers of all these various West Valley cities about VTA and bus service, right? Because, and VTA is trying to maximize its efficiency, but the way you do that actually is, it doesn't necessarily, it's sometimes in opposition to service, right? The way to maximize efficiency is by pulling all the buses back to downtown San Jose where all the people are, and you serve maybe just 3% of the, or whatever, some percent, you fill all the buses. And so for me, because I've had a lot of parents also come talk to me about a lot of some of these issues that Lori talked about in terms of what's the district policy. And on assigning bus routes, I have always assumed that I can just go to Dr. Baker and somewhere there is a recipe on how we assign these, and so I'm finding that we actually don't. So I very much agree with what Phyllis is saying. I think this is something though that we have 2 years, but at the same time, this is the kind of thing where you're going to want to get community input, and so I would sort of argue for when we have time bring this in front of the board, really looking at this. And I guess aside from maximizing efficiency, there's also a service aspect. I think what you both had talked about in terms of, I think we have end of the day, right? I feel like this is a public agency. We're here to provide services, right? It's not a for-profit kind of thing. We want to stay solvent. But to me, there's a bar somewhere about providing service. And for me, making sure that kids don't have to cross like Lawrence Expressway or the Foothill, to me that's a pretty, because I think it would be good for us to talk about what are our values. Where do you set the bar? You have to be able to explain to somebody why this, well, why that? Is there a scoring system? Is it a distance thing? Is it, having to cross Lawrence Expressway is like a 10-point and that kind of thing. So to sort of think through that. So I guess I'm adding my vote to what Phyllis has talked about in terms of having a rethink of this entire program. And having that just come back sooner than later so people have opportunity to plan, but also putting in a plug for it's not really, for me, maximizing efficiency, but providing service to our students. Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
I have two comments. One kind of tagging along with what Jerry said is, have we ever done a survey, like, to the community to ask about a service and people's need slash, desire or something? And then would that be something we could possibly do? Just to get,
with what purpose?
to get a sense of, like, if nobody wants, or not nobody, but if the number of people that want slash need the bus isn't sustainable, I guess, just to get a sense of like how many people actually is it impacting when we make these decisions. That's what I'm thinking.
Just a little life lesson for me is having done that in other districts, and what happened to us actually with our Cooper Doodle programs and the preschools is you do these surveys, and what you get back is thousands of people saying, "Oh yeah, I do that tomorrow," and then when you actually run them, 8 people show up. And that's not an exaggeration. That's how it goes. So I would just say it's hard to get likelihood of actual leading to ridership from surveying. So I think we might have to do some other way of engaging with folks around it and how you get to a true, but would you use it? Because as we're finding, we're losing ridership now, not gaining. So that's a touchstone for us. And so.
Yeah, so maybe something. Maybe not a district-wide survey, but at least something where we can interact with those parents or families that are using it and figuring out what the impact would be.
Almost seems like, I'm playing off of what I'm hearing from both of you, and it almost seems like maybe it goes back to kind of our strategic plan process of identifying priorities, right? If the survey is focused on, in your list of priorities, what do you value? Is it, is it the buses? Is it crossing guards? Is it education? Is it education around getting to school safely? Is it, around this whole idea of getting kids back and forth to school? If you include all of the things that are sort of in that bucket, what is the list of priorities that we as a community have? That seems to me to be more valuable survey data than would you ride a bus or not, to your point of, sure, I'd ride a bus, and then
but it's also a way of what are the options.
Yeah.
So for example, I could put out options for those streets we're talking about that are unsafe for crossing that would not cost us $1 billion a year to handle. It just, it wouldn't, it would be $100,000, right? Oh, I just saved $900,000. So I'm just saying, answering that in the void of, here are several options. So until we get into the conversations and talk, well, what are other ways to do it, and what might be, now you bring people in and talk about it in a way. Because in the end, we would only be surveying or talking to, however we do it, the people who are using it right now, which is a skewed sample compared, right? It's 400 kids right now out of 17,000 something.
Well, and if you're going to do some thinking about this, I don't think we need a full-blown task force, but I think something around, gathering some key inputs from both sites that have transportation in our gen ed that's working and what's not working, but also maybe sites that have asked for it and what's working, what's not working. And I'm sure our staff has, great insight into what's working and not working, and some of the factors that, we may not be considering. I think,
Yes, what I'm hearing is there's definitely a lot of interest among board members that we put some priority time into this over the next year, bring information, have multiple conversations, try to learn from community as much as we can about the good, bad, and the ugly of it all, and then we'll have these conversations, and we'll make that a priority to do that.
Sounds good. Anything more on that? We're obviously going to hear it again and again and again probably, so that's a good thing. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, ladies, for being here and for staying so long and answering our questions. Discussion action, approval of the management consulting agreement with TBWBH, what are the new names, for 2019 parcel tax. Is anybody going to talk to us about this, or we just relying on what we read?
Yeah, I'm assuming that we're just, Jeff, on the TBWBH contracting, is there anything we need to, so we just want a motion and it's really following up from our last conversation.
Okay, so I need a motion and we can, what do you want to do?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, one second.
I can second.
Okay, moved and seconded, now discussion period.
I have a question about the compensation rate. So in section 3B, so it basically talks about the goods and services shall be purchased from TBWBH, and there's an attached schedule of prices. And then so we have to buy from them, and then they'll subcontract the work. There's a clause in there. It says that we'll give preference to third-party vendors who donate or discount their services. I was just wondering what the intent of that was, because if we're paying a fixed price according to the schedule, wouldn't we want the best vendor rather than one that's donating the services? I don't know if I'm misreading something here.
Jeff, I might need your help with this one. Jeff, do you remember we talked about this? So my understanding, if I can remember this, is that the schedule is there because you need some sort of a reference to dollar amounts. So it's essentially an example of a pricing. And so while they're saying that they're in the document itself, it is saying they will go out to get those services either gifted, donated to the district, or they'll go out and get a lower price than that. But they have to have sort of a cap, if you will, of what it could cost so that you have something like that. But it's clear that their intent, as they state in there, is to actually get it donated or at a much reduced price.
Yes, and in addition, one of the things we asked them is there a way for us, instead of doing that tear-off ticket, for example, where mailers become very expensive, we wanted the ability to have something where they can, our community can text in their responses, so it's a lot faster, so we could reduce our costs. They didn't actually have pricing for that at that time, because what they shared is they hadn't been made that request before, but we viewed it as a way to lower our costs and have higher engagement. We know people look at their mail and they're going to have their phone with them, and the ability to send a message right then and there, we might actually get more of a response than if we were waiting for them to go to a mailbox and return something. And so they didn't know what the cost of that would be. I do think it's less than mailing, but.
So the prices in Exhibit 1 is actually a not to exceed, as opposed to.
It's a cap.
It's a cap. Yeah. Okay, so it's not, that's not, okay, so it's not just want to make sure it's not a fixed price, it's a price cap.
That's correct.
Okay.
And for some reason, which I can't imagine that happening, but if it were to exceed that, we'd actually have to come back to you as the board for a discussion.
Okay. And then you anticipated my second question. I was wondering who was going to collate all these little tear-off reply cards, but it sounds like...
Are you busy?
So, yeah, it sounds like you're thinking of something else more modern, so thank you. That's good, yeah.
Anything else on TBWBH?
So it's a scheduled payment now, right? It's a schedule. It's like there are multiple payments happening, and this is one of that. This 24,000 or something.
So this goes,
If I remember, is it like that?
I don't know, Jeff, maybe if I ask it this way, this goes back to the kind of where we were at in the calendar slide from last time, right?
It represents the various phases of the process. So we had the feasibility study, which was considered phase 1. As we move into phase 2, potentially phase 3 and 4, each of those phases represents a different part of work or a different piece of work associated with the potential parcel tax.
So in a way, last time when we approved that we are going to go ahead with that, that includes all this payment, right, in a way?
That's correct. That's what this is.
Okay. So then okay. So that means we are not deviating or anything. It's pretty much on the schedule we are paying. Correct?
We don't deviate from when the board takes action on the item and approves a phase. We then bring that contract typically the very next meeting for the next phase, and that process will follow all the way through up until most likely August 1st when a decision, when you as a board will make a decision whether or not we go to the final phase of the parcel tax.
So what I'm saying is, since we approved that, do we need to have an approval for each of this phase payment or no?
Do not at this time.
So this is a discussion and action, right? This is an action.
Yes, we have
So
a
that's
motion
what
on the table.
action is to, so that's what I'm asking. So every time do we have to approve this?
Yes.
Because it's a contract, yeah.
But once we agree this, right? That's what.
Yeah, once this is agreed, assuming it gets passed today, then no, we don't come back with.
Not that. Last time we said that we will go ahead with them, kind of a proposal, right?
That's what this is.
No, I thought that when they presented here, like, right?
You gave us direction
Direction.
to move forward, to
Okay,
have
okay,
them
okay.
provide the service. So we're bringing back the contract
Okay.
that is associated with that direction that you.
That gives
that
us
you
the
gave
policy. Yeah.
And it's likely that therefore you won't see any more of these things because it's most likely that the next time we have to take action on anything will be to put it on the ballot, at which point we will not be able to spend any district funds going forward from that point.
There will, just to clarify, there will be a cost associated with placing it on the ballot, though, that we'll vote on at that time.
Right, but that's what the decision is, yes.
Anything else? There's a motion and been seconded, so we're ready for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Board and superintendent activity. Wait a minute, where's the agenda say? Oh, it's after this. Okay. Board and superintendent activity. I'm curious, how many of us are going to Masters in Governance? Is it tomorrow? Yeah. All but Satish. Okay, I'm going to. All right, and Saturday? Yeah, okay. By the way, just
Saturday, so.
you're not going Saturday. Satish, are you going Saturday? No, you're not doing this Satish.
Yeah.
Just FYI, I'm wearing jeans. Not dressing.
Good to know. We got the message.
Just let me know. So, and as long as I started, I'll go ahead with, I have 3 more SIPSs to do and 4 more school visits to do. I'm done. Lori?
Okay, so I have 2 more SIPSs to go. I threw all my school visits, but now I have 2 more SIPSs to go. Then I wanted to invite, I guess. I am planning on going to, CSBA is having a day of legislative action, a rally up in Sacramento on May 22nd. It is aligning with the Red for Ed and California Teachers Association Legislative Action Day up at the Capitol. So CTA and CSBA are joining together for a big rally at 4 o'clock on the 22nd. I'm going, I think Sylvia is going, and so anybody else who wants to come, I've got 4 seats left in my car, and I will be happy to have you with me up there. I have reached out to all of our legislators to see if any can make time for us to meet with them to talk CUSD specific, how full and fair funding would impact us as a district. So that's one piece of board activity. And then the other one that I wanted to say is I know many of us, all of us got many, 30-something letters regarding Rainier Creek Trail. And so I will be going on the 21st to the meeting at the city in my capacity as an elected official, but speaking only for myself and obviously not for our board. I will be doing what I think I was elected to do, which is to advocate for kids and for safety of our kids, and I personally believe safe routes to school is part of that. And so I will be there on the 21st, and again, would be happy to have anybody join me.
And by the way, I will respond to all those emails. I didn't today, they just came in today, but.
There were a lot.
There were a lot. And you guys will get a copy of that, so you'll see what I say.
Actually,
It'd be a surprise.
yes, I guess I should clarify and say that the many letters of support, the many letters that we got, 30-something of them, were asking us to take a stand with a letter of support for the Creek Trail, specifically in its capacity to enhance safety and recreation opportunities for kids, and specifically affects our Eaton and Lawson kids.
Gary.
Okay. So I've done, I think, 4 of the 5 CIPSAs. Just a real quick note, I think I've been getting a very consistent message from the principals that really like this exercise. I think I've read, CIPSAs from Lincoln before, and to be honest, it seemed like every year they look the same. They kind of change the date, but everything looked the same. And this time I could really see the personalities of the principals as well as the differences in the school site. So we can talk more about that when we get to that, but I think there's a general appreciation having gone through this exercise. More than one principal told me they feel like they really own it now as opposed to something you had to do because it was a state requirement. So general, positive feedback. I think the main thing is Sakisha and I will be meeting, we have a date set for 2x2, the city of Cupertino on, I think, Friday, May 24th. It's 5:30, I think, to 7:30, so it's around dinner time. I guess bring a box dinner or something, and I think Jeff will be able to attend, and so to provide support for us. So yeah, we'll kind of get this kicked off with the city of Cupertino.
Okay. I've completed all 5 schools for CIPSA as of this morning. But the bad part is, I started like almost a month back. So the first school was just starting. So they had, I would say, pre-draft, not even a draft, I would say. So there's a lot of changes happened over a period of time. But I think I can see a clear, consistent way, like over the days, like, the place where I went today morning, pretty much they're done, some kind of that place. And so last week and this week I visited 2 schools. So I've done at least 5, all my assigned schools. That's good. And all of them invited me for one or the other their year-end programs. So it's good. And good experience. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Sylvia.
I also completed all of my CIPSAs, so excited about that. This week has been fun. I went to the McAuliffe Art Show, which was amazing. These kids have really amazing artistic talent. And then went to Dilworth's International Tasting Night. And it was like a community potluck. It was so good. So that was really fun. And actually just of today, I have a meeting set up with Chappie Jones. And thank you, Jerry, for the introduction. That's going to happen in mid-June. So I'll touch base with you about that.
Okay. And then we move on to, Craig, I'm sorry.
Are we allowed to ask questions? No.
Well, it was just a clarifying idea.
Do you need somebody to go with you to the Chappie Jones one, or are you doing that alone?
I think we have to be careful. This is what.
Want to look back on that? Okay.
Well, just because of the 2x2s and the overlap of certain things, so it's a little more complicated than that. So I would say
I'll let you address it.
Work with me.
Okay.
Superintendent.
Actually, Laura, you and I are going to talk with Joe Simiti in a little bit on the 23rd, just to talk a little bit about the difficulties of having multiple jurisdictions, and that our supports like police, fire department, et cetera, there are a lot of things that aren't consistent across those, and just kind of talking from a policy perspective on shouldn't, how to deal with that, and whether there aren't some legislative things that we might pursue in some way. So just letting you know that we're having that conversation with Joe. And I had a great day today where I got interviewed by students in Miller about they filmed it, and so we'll see how it comes out. But they have students doing these great projects that they just take on. And these 2 girls wanted to study teacher pay, salaries, and just interviewed me about how it works, what is step and column, how do schedules work, do I think that they should get paid more, et cetera, and things like that. It was great. I mean, the work they're doing at that school with getting kids engaged in meaningful, authentic exercise like that is really impressive.
Good. Okay, agenda setting. I had a question about agenda setting, and one thing that came up in Master of Governance, I think, last time was, are we interested in moving our closed sessions to before the meetings instead of after? So that's my question. Are we interested?
Yeah, I think like what we did today, 5:45 looks okay, because if you can do it in 15 minutes maybe, or 5:30, right? That's what it is.
5:30.
I was thinking more in terms of 5:30. 5:45, by the time we get in and get settled, we only have 10 minutes left.
Okay, because it's going beyond 9 is more tougher for India calls and other things for us.
I think from my perspective, like the Cupertino City Council, that they do it early, and the advantage of that is then people can hear the report outs. Because nobody ever hears our report outs. I don't know if this means that we want to start do we want to start a closed session at 5:30 and with regular at 6, or are folks thinking, we'll just start the regular one a little bit later?
No, we would do 5:30 to 6.
Okay.
And then if we don't complete, we do like we did today, we would just go back in. But having a half hour, we probably could pace ourselves. Today we have 4 items, which we don't usually have. Usually it's 1 or 2, and that's it.
So it sounds like Jerry and Satish are okay with that. Lori, where are you on that?
It's harder logistically for me with the kids and with just getting them from carpool and still trying to get kids to activities and get dinner on the table and everything else. I would make it work if that's what we need to do as a group. I see the value both for any of our staff that needs to be here to have it done early, as well as I'm sure for some of our consultants that we sometimes need to touch base with. So I think there's a lot of good reasons to do it, and I guess I would just need to figure out how to shift. Are we talking about doing it all the time beforehand? Yeah.
Well, no, all the time that we have.
Anytime there's closed session.
Closed session, which isn't all the time.
Could we start at 6:30, the regular session?
Yeah, we could do that as well. I'm not sure it helps in any way, right? Because then you have you're not shortening the total amount of time or anything, right? It's just when you're doing the closed session portion. But that's okay. I mean, we should really. And the other thing we could do is, what if we tried it for 1 month for closed session, see how it goes. If it's ending up being really difficult, then we'll talk about it. And
the other thing we could do, we hadn't heard from Sylvia yet. Sylvia, what do you think?
Is this agenda setting?
Uh-huh.
Like this discussion is?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so confused. I'm fine either way.
So this is not a decision we have to make tonight. We can revisit it at the advance, and we don't have to start it until next year if we're going to do it. I mean, we've got some options here. Satish?
Now should we to support this consent, and probably should we start? Okay. If we have, most of the time will be 15-20 minutes only we do it, but only today is an exception, right? So most of the closed sessions are like about 15 minutes.
15?
That's what we would do.
I am fine. And if you want to try it for a month, and then maybe we can touch base again, and I'll see what that shift has been like.
Or we could keep it like we just do 5:45, get a jump on it. Our attorneys can be here on the ones where they need to be present. It allows us to be efficient in that way, and just see how that goes, and we'll talk about it again.
5:45, and if it is not over, it can be.
And finish it at the end?
It's my 10-year-old right now, right? I'm still getting through homework, and so that's my.
Have you been doing your son's homework?
No, but sometimes they need support on it, right?
Yes.
So are we all agreed we're going to try for the next month, or do you want to wait till next year? Try for the next month for 5:45 when there is a closed session.
Have any of that?
If we have it. Okay.
We have to do item 9.9. So I'm hoping to find a date where we can revisit that same one, and we'll update the document for you when we post it, which we'll post tomorrow, in hopes of having 3 of you available at least for maybe Tuesday afternoon. Jeff, does that work on your calendar, do you think?
Yeah.
So.
And would it appear as consent, or is this not consent?
No, we will do an action item, so we can talk you through it.
Okay.
Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
At what time?
I would, for us, probably anytime from 3:45 on.
I can do it.
I know they're later than that. There's a Miller Band concert, so hopefully we do it.
Which date?
The 14th, I believe. So like, what if we said
How long do you?
what if we said
anticipate?
4 or 4:30 or something on Tuesday? And some of you I know can't, but who could do 4:30?
I can.
Or 5? We can do 5 o'clock too.
I can definitely do 5 o'clock if we.
How many can do? Do I have at least 3 people that can do 5 o'clock?
I can do
I can do 30, but not 5. Who do you have beside me? Jerry, did you say yes to 5
Yes,
o'clock?
yes.
Anybody else say yes to 5
So, you know,
o'clock?
let's.
5:30? I can do 5:30.
All right.
We can get 3 at 5, we can do it at 5.
No, morning too. I mean, anytime you make it.
Did you just say?
There's that coalition meeting. We could do it first thing in the morning, like 8:30.
On Tuesday.
Because it's only going to be a quick item anyway, so.
I can do that on Tuesday.
Tuesday,
I could do the morning better, but
we're posting for 3 days. If we're doing that tomorrow, or is it special so we don't have to meet the 3-day line?
It'd be 24 hours. It would
It would be considered a special board meeting, so it doesn't mean a 3-day posting, but we want to post with as much time as we can give.
Okay. So what about that? I hear there's at least 3 of you that can do 8:30.
Tuesday morning, you can do that?
Morning or evening at 8:30 morning is fine for me.
Okay, so who's going to do 8:30 in the morning? Sylvia, Satish, and Lori? I can't. You're not.
I'm a maybe.
Okay,
No.
all right, so you got 3.
but then didn't we also have 3 for 5 o'clock?
5 or 5:30 is what I heard.
I can do 5:30, but not 5.
Jeff, is 5:30
Or
problem?
5:30 is fine too.
On
5:30 I'm okay. Well,
I can do 5 or 5:30.
Let's do 5:30. Let's do 5:30 on Tuesday. That way I know we have enough people for sure.
Yeah.
I have to figure out.
That's okay, because as long as we have 5 here,
Yeah.
before that can do it, so.
5:30 on Tuesday.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Okay, let's do that. And then those who can come, but I have to make sure I've got at least 3 of you. So, commit, please.
So if I understand right, you're going to repost to clarify whatever the documents are that are with it, and then we would proceed as you had originally anticipated on that.
Pretty much, we'll describe the change to you, which is actually very minor, but it's something we have to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? So agenda setting means we can talk about scheduling?
Yes, and set agendas and talk about what items we want to talk about in the future. We just can't talk about those items.
Got it.
Yeah.
So can I ask the question of, because board meetings used to be on Tuesdays, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it got switched to Thursdays last year or this year, I don't remember.
Last year.
Is there, what was the reason for it? And
to get the flow, and we can talk more offline about it and then bring it back. If you want to raise that again with folks, we can bring it back. It was there because of this idea of giving you enough time to read the information, get it to me ahead of time so we can have the conversation, and then staff has time to prepare. Because if not, we were finding we're going to these meetings and we weren't getting the questions, and then it's just you can't. It's not an efficient way to do it. So that's why we did it. Doesn't mean we can't come back and visit.
So do you want that on a future agenda item?
yeah, could we put that on the agenda item? Only because I've gotten some feedback from principals about it.
I know where you're going with that. Yeah, I have to. Okay.
All right, so you've got that as a future agenda item?
And then I had another future agenda
Anything
item.
else, Sylvia? Yeah.
I was wondering if, and I know Craig and I talked about it briefly, but if we could get some sort of presentation or just some information about what our not safety, but like with the school shooting happening this week, I just would like to get a better understanding of what our district, I know we have the policies in place and the procedures in place, but could we put it on an agenda item, or is it already scheduled, or?
Well, we did some of that this year already, but we can, yeah, certainly, that's an important topic, so it seems, we can bring something back, yeah.
Anything else? No, just one more in the crowd. Satish, anything for agendas?
No, any scheduled change, I'll be happy to contribute on this, okay? So,
Okay. Jerry, anything? Lori, anything? Craig, do I need to clarify the safe routes one, or is that coming back either way? The request for that one?
I don't know what you're talking about.
So I had asked last time if safe routes could come back, and is that one coming back for sure, or do we need to get?
Okay, so you're requesting to have it brought back? When I asked Sachi, you said you weren't necessarily going to do that, so but if you're requesting, yes, we should ask whether other people feel we should.
I don't mean right away. I mean, do I need to request it here for what we talked about, for it to come back with a more robust chance to look at?
Well, let's just put it out there then. Would people like to have come back to a safe routes conversation at a board meeting, agendize it at a board meeting in the near future?
Lori, could you say a bit more? So, were you thinking of more of an in-depth presentation, or were you thinking actions we might take?
So I'd like to have a discussion about what we see as the district and the board's role in that. That may include discussion around how that feeds into our 2x2s. That may include discussion around how that looks in terms of education. That may include a discussion around levels of comfort with advocacy. That may include discussions around certainly existing conditions as it pertains to anything we want to share with each other about things that have been brought up, and making sure that we have a process in place for working with Leslie to make the staff to make sure that information is getting passed on. I think there's lots of things that could be in that item that I think would take time to do well, and so I want to make sure we're mindful about giving staff time to.
So my question to the rest of the board is there interest in bringing that back? If Lori's the only one, we won't. If there's more interest than just Lori, we will.
Well, I'm intrigued, and I'd like to support Lori in this. I think this is something she has passion for, so from that perspective, I think certainly traffic safety is something that's important to me also, so I would be supportive. I'm happy to add my second vote to bring this back.
That's two, I think we bring it back. All right. Anything else anybody has for agenda setting? Okay, I think we're done.
Yeah.
Oh, we go to closed session. We're going to closed session.